नमस्ते। चलिए आज एक ऐसे आइडिया के बारे में बात करते हैं जो सुनने में बिल्कुल किसी साइंस फिक्शन फिल्म जैसा लगता है। एक बनावटी सूरज बनाने का आइडिया। और पता है क्या, ये सिर्फ कोई कोरी कल्पना नहीं है, बल्कि इस एक आइडिया को हकीकत में बदलने के लिए दो बिल्कुल अलग-अलग कोशिशें हो रही हैं।
तो सवाल ये उठता है कि क्या हम सच में एक दूसरा सूरज बना सकते हैं? मतलब एक ऐसा सूरज जो हमारी रातों को भी दिन की तरह रोशन कर दे? देखिए, ये सवाल बहुत बड़ा है और इसका जवाब उतना सीधा नहीं है जितना लगता है।
और जैसा कि मैंने कहा, ये सिर्फ कोई हवाई बातें नहीं हैं। हाल ही में रिफ्लेक्ट ऑर्बिटल नाम के एक स्टार्टअप ने रात के आसमान को रोशन करने का एक बहुत बड़ा दावा किया है। उनका प्लान क्या है? स्पेस से, जी हाँ, स्पेस से सीधे धरती पर सूरज की रोशनी भेजना। तो चलिए इस बड़े प्लान को थोड़ा और करीब से देखते हैं। क्या रात के वक्त सूरज की रोशनी पाना सच में मुमकिन है? आइए पता करते हैं। तो देखिए, इस कंपनी का जो आइडिया है वो सुनने में काफी सीधा साधा है। ये लोग क्या करेंगे कि स्पेस में बहुत सारे सैटेलाइट्स भेजेंगे जिन पर बड़े बड़े शीशे लगे होंगे, माइलार जैसे। और ये शीशे सूरज की रोशनी को पकड़कर उसे धरती के उन हिस्सों पर भेजेंगे जहां रात हो रही है। अगर हम टेक्निकलिटीज की बात करें तो ये सैटेलाइट्स धरती से कोई 600 किलोमीटर ऊपर ऑर्बिट में रहेंगे। अब इतनी ऊंचाई पर ये लगातार सूरज की रोशनी में रहते हैं। हर एक सैटेलाइट का जो बड़ा सा शीशा है वो धरती पर करीब 5 किलोमीटर के एरिया को रोशन कर सकता है। पर रुकिए, ये कोई दिन जैसी चकाचौंध रोशनी नहीं होगी। ये रोशनी करीब करीब वैसी होगी जैसी एक पूर्णिमा की रात में होती है। और अब बात करते हैं कीमत की। कितनी होगी? करीब $5,000 प्रति घंटा। लेकिन हैरानी की बात यह है कि इसके बावजूद इस सर्विस के लिए 2,60,000 से भी ज्यादा एप्लीकेशंस आ चुकी हैं। मतलब लोगों में इसे लेकर दिलचस्पी तो बहुत है। लेकिन देखिए, जब भी कोई इतना बड़ा दावा सामने आता है ना, तो साइंस और असलियत को हाइप से अलग करके देखना बहुत जरूरी हो जाता है। तो सवाल ये है कि क्या ये आइडिया सुनने में जितना अच्छा लगता है उतना ही प्रैक्टिकल भी है? तो सबसे पहली बात, इसके पीछे की फिजिक्स बिल्कुल सॉलिड है। मतलब स्पेस से लाइट को रिफ्लेक्ट करना मुमकिन है। ऐसा पहले किया भी जा चुका है, जैसे कि ज़नोमिया 2 मिशन में। तो हाँ, ये कोई हवाई किला नहीं है, ये हो सकता है। लेकिन यहीं पर सबसे बड़ी प्रैक्टिकल दिक्कत आती है। देखिए, धरती के लो ऑर्बिट में सैटेलाइट्स बहुत बहुत तेजी से घूमते हैं। इसका मतलब क्या हुआ? इसका मतलब ये हुआ कि कोई एक सैटेलाइट किसी एक जगह को एक बार में सिर्फ 4 मिनट के लिए रोशन कर पाएगा। जी हाँ, सिर्फ 4 मिनट। और जब हम इसकी कीमत की तुलना इसके फायदों से करते हैं तो मामला और भी साफ हो जाता है। सोचिए, एक तरफ जमीन पर एलईडी फ्लडलाइट्स हैं या ड्रोन्स हैं जो ज्यादा तेज, लगातार और कहीं ज्यादा सस्ती रोशनी दे सकते हैं। और दूसरी तरफ स्पेस से आने वाली सिर्फ 4 मिनट की हल्की रोशनी के लिए $5,000 खर्च करना, ये सौदा कुछ ठीक नहीं लगता है ना? तो निचोड़ ये है कि हाँ, फिजिक्स के लिहाज से ये आइडिया मुमकिन है, पर इकोनॉमिक्स के लिहाज से ये बहुत कमजोर है। आम इस्तेमाल के लिए तो बिल्कुल भी प्रैक्टिकल नहीं है। इसका असली इस्तेमाल अगर कहीं हो सकता है तो वो है बहुत ही खास हालात में, जैसे कहीं आपदा आ गई हो या फिर डिफेंस ऑपरेशंस में, जहां फौरन रोशनी की जरूरत पड़े। तो चलिए अब स्पेस से रात को रोशन करने के इस बड़े से आइडिया से थोड़ा हटते हैं और एक दूसरे नजरिए को देखते हैं। एक ऐसा नजरिया जो कहीं ज्यादा जमीनी और कहीं ज्यादा पर्सनल है। जरा सोचिए, क्या हो अगर असली चैलेंज रात के अंधेरे को हराना हो ही ना, बल्कि दिन के उजाले को उन जगहों तक पहुंचाना हो जहां सूरज खुद नहीं पहुंच पाता, जैसे हमारे अपने घरों के अंदर। और यही सोच हमें ले जाती है भारत के एक शहर देहरादून में, जहां एक बिल्कुल असल प्रोजेक्ट चल रहा है। यहाँ बनावटी सूरज का मतलब स्पेस जीतना नहीं, बल्कि लोगों की जिंदगी को बेहतर बनाना है। ये पहल की है दून ट्रैफलगर RWA ने। देखिए, यहाँ पर जो मुश्किल है वो रात का अंधेरा नहीं है। मुश्किल है सर्दियों के मौसम में दिन के वक्त धूप की कमी, जिसका सीधा असर वहाँ के सीनियर सिटीजन्स की सेहत पर पड़ रहा था। और समस्या बिल्कुल साफ है। देहरादून में सर्दियों में कोहरा होता है और ऊंची ऊंची बिल्डिंग्स की वजह से कई फ्लैट्स में तो धूप पहुंच ही नहीं पाती। नतीजा, वहां रहने वाले बुजुर्गों में मूड खराब रहना, विटामिन डी की कमी होना और नींद न आने जैसी परेशानियां बहुत आम हो गई थीं। तो इस मुश्किल से निपटने के लिए वहां के लोगों ने एक बहुत ही सरल लेकिन असरदार प्लान बनाया। उन्होंने असल सूरज को घर के अंदर लाने की कोशिश नहीं की, बल्कि सूरज से मिलने वाले फायदों को घर के अंदर लाने का एक तरीका ढूंढ निकाला।
उनके प्लान के 2 हिस्से हैं। पहला, हर फ्लैट में एक पर्सनल सनलाइट लैंप देना। ये लैंप सूरज की रोशनी जैसी ही तेज रोशनी देते हैं। और दूसरा, बिल्डिंग के कॉमन एरिया में, जैसे कि हॉल और गलियारों में, आर्टिफिशियल स्काईलाइट्स लगाना, ताकि वहां हमेशा दिन जैसा माहौल महसूस हो।
और अगर हम खर्च की बात करें तो स्पेस वाले प्रोजेक्ट के मुकाबले ये कुछ भी नहीं है। ये एक ऐसा इन्वेस्टमेंट है जिसका फायदा सीधे सीधे वहां रहने वाले लोगों की सेहत और खुशी को मिलता है। उनकी जिंदगी की क्वालिटी में एक असल फर्क आता है। तो ये सब हमें एक बहुत ही जरूरी सवाल पर लाकर खड़ा कर देता है कि असली इनोवेशन आखिर है क्या।
इस पूरे प्रोजेक्ट के पीछे की जो सोच है वो इस एक लाइन में छिपी है। आप फ्लैट्स के अंदर असली सूरज तो नहीं ला सकते, लेकिन उसके फायदों को जरूर ला सकते हैं। ये दिखाता है कि प्रैक्टिकल होना और इंसानी ज़रूरतों पर ध्यान देना कितना ज़रूरी है।
और शायद यही आज की हमारी इस पड़ताल का सबसे बड़ा सबक है कि हो सकता है सबसे कमाल के इनोवेशंस वो न हो जो पूरी दुनिया को रोशन करने का सपना देखें, बल्कि वो हो जो किसी एक इंसान की छोटी सी दुनिया को रोशन कर दें।
Imagine waking up at like 2:80 a.m. in the dead of winter. It is pitch black outside. You roll over, grab your smartphone, open an app, punch in your exact GPS coordinates, and hit a button that basically says order.
Right.
And a few minutes later, the sky above you begins to glow. A localized beam of genuine, literal sunlight blasts down from outer space, illuminating your exact location in the middle of the night.
It sounds completely absurd, like pure science fiction.
It totally sounds like science fiction. But today, we're actually looking at the documented blueprint of a company trying to sell you the sun on demand.
Yeah, and I mean, it is a massive, almost unthinkable engineering swing, because for the entirety of human history, the sun's schedule has been this unnegotiable reality, right?
Right, exactly.
We build shelters to hide from it, we invent fire and harness electricity to push back the dark, but telling the sun where to shine and exactly when, that has strictly been the realm of mythology. Until right now, I guess, if you believe the math being presented by some very ambitious engineers.
And that brings us to the core mission of today's deep dive. We are exploring a truly fascinating stack of sources that highlight humanity's boldest attempts to control sunlight. So on one hand, we have this detailed report on an American space startup called Reflect Orbital. And they are promising to essentially turn the sun into a subscription service.
Which is wild.
It is. And on the exact opposite end of the spectrum, we have a detailed project report, a DPR from a residential community in Dehradun, India. And they are trying desperately to bring sunlight to their senior citizens during freezing, foggy winters.
And that contrast, right, between a multi-billion-dollar space mirror constellation and a highly optimized community-funded wellness initiative, it really tells us everything about the gap between technological capability and actual human utility.
Totally.
Because we can do something massive in space doesn't mean it's the right tool for the job down here on Earth.
Okay, let's unpack this, because we have to start with this sci-fi ambition from Reflect Orbital. Their pitch is incredibly simple on paper, like, what if the sun didn't have to set? They want to put a fleet of satellites into a sun-synchronous polar orbit. And based on the specs in the documents, that is about 600 to 625 kilometers straight up. But I want to make sure I'm visualizing the physics of this correctly. How exactly does a satellite stay in the sun while the Earth directly below it is completely in the dark?
Well, that is the genius of a sun-synchronous orbit. Think of the Terminator line, and not the Arnold Schwarzenegger movie, obviously.
Right.
But the actual physical boundary line on Earth that divides day and night. A satellite in this specific polar orbit essentially rides that twilight line continuously.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because of the specific angle and altitude, as the Earth rotates beneath it, the satellite stays in the exact same position relative to the sun, so it is permanently bathed in brilliant, unfiltered solar radiation, even while the cities rolling by 600 kilometers below are experiencing midnight.
And they aren't just up there soaking up that light for, solar panels. They're carrying massive mirrors to bounce it back down. The sources indicate these mirrors are anywhere from 10 to 54 meters wide. They're made of mylar. So for you listening, picture the material of those shiny, crinkly silver helium balloons you get for a birthday party.
Yes, perfect analogy.
Right. Now imagine that material engineered to be ultra-light, incredibly reflective, and scaled up to the size of an entire commercial office building.
What's fascinating here is that the underlying science is entirely solid. I mean, when someone says they were selling sunbeams from an app, the immediate instinct is to write it off as pure vaporware, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or just some tech bro fantasy.
Oh, absolutely. That was my first thought.
But the reflection of sunlight from space is actually well understood optics. This isn't just theoretical modeling. This has actually happened. Back in 1993, the Russians ran a project called Znamya 2.
Wait, the Russians actually built a functioning space mirror in the 90s?
They did. Russian cosmonauts deployed a 20-meter aluminum-coated mylar structure from a supply ship near the Mir space station.
You're kidding.
No. And it successfully caught the sun's rays and created this 5-kilometer-wide spot of light that swept across Europe. It was fleeting, sure, but it was visible from the ground as a bright, moving pulse of light. So the physics of bouncing light from orbit to the surface are absolutely proven. This is hard engineering, not magic.
Which brings us to the business model, which honestly might be the wildest part of the whole document. It's essentially like ordering an Uber, but instead of a car picking you up, you are literally requesting a targeted sunbeam from space.
Yeah, just summoning light from the heavens.
You just open their mobile app, input your coordinates, and pay to have that massive mirror angle itself to hit you.
Mm-hmm.
And people are absolutely buying into the hype.
They really are.
The sources note they've already received 260,000 applications for the early access service. That is over 250,000 people wanting to order the sun. And the starting price, it sits at roughly $5,000 per hour.
And that staggering price tag is exactly where we need to start looking at the severe physical and economic limitations of this concept.
Yeah, let's get into that.
Because the gap between the marketing hype of an on-demand sunbeam and the engineering reality is just massive.
Exactly. So let's puncture the hype a bit. $5,000 for an hour of night sun. Now, right now, you are probably doing the math in your head and thinking, wait, if the Earth is rotating and the satellite is moving.
Because it has to be moving to stay in orbit.
Right. So how does the mirror keep the beam fixed on my backyard? Wouldn't the light just streak across the ground like a giant laser pointer?
You hit on the exact physical limitation of the entire concept. Satellites in low Earth orbit do not hover. They can't. They're moving incredibly fast, like roughly 7.5 kilometers per second.
That is so fast.
It is. So to keep the light on a specific GPS coordinate, the satellite has to physically pivot its massive mylar mirror on a motorized gimbal to perfectly track the target as it flies over.
Okay.
And because of the curvature of the Earth and that immense orbital speed, a single satellite can only maintain the correct angle for a maximum of about 4 minutes.
Wait, so for $5,000 an hour, I don't even get daylight to read a book by. I'm just paying for a glorified 4-minute artificial moonbeam.
Precisely. To provide continuous lighting for that full hour you just paid for, Reflect Orbital would need an unfathomably large constellation of satellites.
Oh, because they'd have to pass the beam off.
Exactly. We are talking hundreds, if not thousands, of these giant mirrors in orbit, perfectly choreographed, handing off the light beam from one satellite to the next without interruption.
Wow.
You would need a network comparable to SpaceX's Starlink. But while Starlink provides global internet to billions of people, this would be servicing an incredibly niche luxury market. The economics simply do not scale for consumer use.
And then there's the actual quality of the light you're getting.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about the brightness reality, because it is nowhere near what people picture.
Not at all.
The sources point out that the illumination area is massive, like about a 5-kilometer wide circle on the ground. But because that light is spreading out over 600 kilometers of atmosphere, losing intensity the whole way down, it is incredibly dim. The brightness is estimated to be only 0.8 to 2.3 lux.
Yeah, and to put that lux measurement into perspective for you, a standard street light outside your house produces anywhere from 10 to 50 lux. A full moon on a clear night is about 0.1 to 0.3 lux. So this space mirror isn't giving you the blazing light of daytime. It is essentially giving you a slightly brighter full moon.
So you're not getting a tan.
Definitely not. You absolutely couldn't use it to light up a city, it wouldn't help with traffic safety, and it is far too dim to power solar panels at night, which is one of the theoretical commercial uses often tossed around by investors.
Not to mention the sheer mechanical terror of trying to unfold a 54-meter-wide sheet of ultra-thin mylar in a vacuum.
Oh.
I mean, think back to the James Webb Space Telescope. We all remember holding our breath, waiting to see if those incredibly complex origami-like heat shields would unfurl without tearing. Now, imagine trying to do that hundreds of times, relying on the budget of an unproven startup.
And the historical precedent there is pretty grim, honestly. We talked about that successful Russians' Namya-2 project from 1993.
Right.
Well, what they don't put in the startup pitch deck is what happened next. The Russians tried to follow up their success with a larger 25-meter version in 1999 called Znamya 2.5.
Oh no, let me guess.
Yep. During deployment, the massive mylar sheet snagged on a space station antenna and ripped. The entire mission was aborted and the satellite burned up in the atmosphere. The failure risk of deploying massive, fragile membranes in space is astronomically high.
And even if they somehow succeed perfectly, we have to talk about the collateral damage. Because flooding an area with artificial moonlight at 2 a.m. could severely disrupt local ecology. It messes with animal migrations, it tricks nocturnal predators, and it completely scrambles human circadian rhythms. Plus, astronomers are already furious.
As they should be.
Reflected light from regular satellites is severely interfering with our ability to look out into the deep universe. Giant, deliberately reflective mirrors would essentially blind Earth-based telescopes.
Which raises an important question, right? If it's too dim for cities, too short-lived for regular use, and poses all these environmental risks, why is anyone building this? What is the actual utility?
Yeah, why bother?
Well, this is where we have to separate consumer app hype from highly specialized engineering, because where this technology is credible is in major crisis response.
Ah, okay, so it's not for a late-night beach party or a concert.
Exactly. Imagine a massive earthquake strikes a developing nation, wiping out the entire power grid and all infrastructure across a mountainous region. Search and rescue operations have to happen immediately, in the dark.
Right, and it's pitch black.
A drone's battery will die in 20 minutes, and a helicopter can only spotlight a tiny patch of rubble. But a space mirror, it could illuminate a 5-kilometer disaster zone just enough for rescue workers to navigate safely through the debris.
Oh, wow.
It could be used to search for a lost vessel in the middle of the remote ocean, or for military operations in hostile territory where you have zero infrastructure. It is a highly specialized emergency tool, essentially masquerading as a consumer luxury app.
Here's where it gets really interesting. This entire space mirror project begs a deeper question. Why are humans so desperate to buy sunlight in the first place?
Exactly.
It's not just about visibility. We can turn on a flashlight for that. What is actually happening to our bodies in the dark? To understand that, we don't need to look at low Earth orbit. We need to look at a foggy winter in the foothills of the Himalayas.
A total shift in perspective.
Yeah, we're moving from Reflect Orbital to the Dune Trafalgar Residential Welfare Association in Dehradun.
And this is a residential complex of 132 flats, and they were facing a very real, pressing, and deeply human crisis. Dehradun is known for its beautiful geography, sure, but it suffers from bitterly cold, dense, foggy winters. And because these are multi-story buildings, the architecture itself blocks a massive amount of natural light when the winter sun is low in the sky. If you live on a lower floor in this complex, you might go days without a single direct ray of sunshine hitting your windows.
And for the demographics of this specific society, that lack of light is critical. Because according to their detailed project report, roughly 40% of the residents are senior citizens.
Right.
For them, missing out on sunlight isn't just an aesthetic bummer, it is a serious physiological hazard. But how exactly does a lack of light damage our health? The sources mentioned it scrambles the circadian rhythm and causes seasonal low mood, but what is the actual biological mechanism happening in the body?
It all comes down to a very specific set of specialized cells in our eyes.
Yeah.
They're called intrinsically photosensitive retinal ganglion cells, or IPRGCs. These cells don't help us see shapes or colors. They act purely as biological light meters. So when they detect the specific blue-rich spectrum of natural daylight, they send a signal directly to the master clock in our brain, the suprachiasmatic nucleus.
Right.
That signal tells the brain to suppress melatonin, which is the sleep hormone, and boost cortisol to wake us up and give us energy. But when you are trapped in a dim, foggy flat for days on end, those eye cells never get the signal.
So your brain literally doesn't know if it's day or night.
Exactly.
Your melatonin production just free falls into chaos. That perfectly explains the severe sleep issues, the drop in energy, and the seasonal depression the residents were experiencing. Their vitamin D cycles were also disrupted, which is crucial for bone health in seniors.
Absolutely.
So they needed a solution desperately. And as they researched how to bring artificial sunlight to their society, their official project report actually evaluated space mirror satellite sunlight as a potential level 4 solution.
Which is just a brilliant piece of serendipity for our deep dive today. This community in India actually looked at the exact kind of technology Reflect Orbital is pitching.
It's amazing.
And you know what their conclusion was? They correctly dismissed it as completely useless for their needs. They noted the light would only last a few minutes, it would be far too dim again, just moonlight level, and the expense would be astronomical. It is entirely useless for residential wellness.
Well, yeah. I mean, if Reflect Orbital Space Mirror is a massive, incredibly expensive sledgehammer, the seniors in Dehradun realized they actually just needed a scalpel.
That's a great way to put it.
Using a multi-billion-dollar space mirror to fix seasonal depression is like trying to water a single houseplant by rerouting a river. They realized they didn't need to reroute a river. They just needed a targeted drip irrigation system for human biology. They needed a practical, grounded fix.
And finding that practical fix required establishing a scientific baseline, like what is natural sunlight really?
Right.
Real, direct outdoor sunlight hits you with an intensity of about 100,000 lux. Now, obviously, you cannot bring 100,000 lux into a multi-story flat.
No, you blind everyone.
You would blind the residents, and you'd generate enough heat to melt the furniture, so you can't recreate the true sun indoors.
But they realized they didn't need to recreate the entire sun. They just needed to simulate the specific biological trigger for those eye cells you mentioned. They needed a targeted intervention. So they developed this brilliant, multi-tiered approach. Their Tier 1 solution was personal light therapy lamps. These are often called SAD lamps for seasonal affective disorder. They don't output 100,000 lux. They output a highly concentrated 10,000 lux.
And critically, they emit a specific color temperature. It's between 5,000 and 6,500 Kelvin. That perfectly mimics the cool blue-white spectrum of a clear daytime sky, but it is completely free of harmful UV rays.
Oh, that's smart. So no sunburns.
Right, no UV damage at all. You don't need to blast the entire neighborhood with light for an hour. If a senior citizen sits near one of these 10,000 lux lamps for just 30 to 45 minutes a day, usually while reading the morning paper or having tea, it provides enough photonic energy to trigger those IPRGCs.
Wow.
It literally hits the brain's reset button. It regulates their circadian rhythm, boosts daytime energy, and fixes their sleep patterns at night.
It is treating the biological root cause with a targeted dose of light. But they didn't stop at the personal level. For their Tier 2 solution, they looked at the communal aspect of living because they wanted the society to actually feel brighter during those gloomy winter days. So they designed artificial skylight LED panels to be installed in common areas, the community halls, the indoor walking corridors, the senior activity rooms.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the way they executed this pilot program is an absolute masterclass in resource allocation.
Oh, totally.
Upgrading lighting in a 132 flat complex is extremely expensive. A premium imported circadian skylight system could cost up to 150,000 rupees, which is nearly $1,800 just for a single room.
That adds up fast.
Very fast. So instead of demanding a massive budget up front, the Welfare Association designed a highly optimized pilot program for just 10 flats to prove the concept.
And this is where the engineering gets truly clever. They brought the cost of the entire pilot down to just 110,000 rupees, which is roughly $1,300 for the whole test phase.
Yeah.
How do they do it? Well, first, instead of buying a personal therapy lamp for every single person right away, they implemented a shared usage model. They put one lamp in a flat, and different residents in that flat used it at different times.
Like a schedule.
Exactly. One person uses it at 8 a.m., another at 9 a.m. That instantly slashed their hardware costs.
And for those communal artificial skylights, instead of buying premium commercial systems, they went entirely DIY.
I love this part.
Right. They sourced standard, high-quality 6,500 Kelvin LED panels, which provide that necessary daylight spectrum. But naked LEDs cause terrible glare, which is really bad for aging eyes.
Okay.
So they combined the panels with custom light diffuser sheets to mimic the scattering effect of the Earth's atmosphere, and then they mounted them in simple wooden frames to look like real skylights. This clever engineering hack saved them 70 to 80% of the cost compared to commercial setups.
It's so incredibly smart. And they documented every detail. They're using this $1,300 pilot to gather hard data, right? Tracking sleep quality, mood improvement, and daily usage among the 10 test flats.
Because you need the data to scale it up.
Yes, because their ultimate goal is a full rollout across the entire 132 flat complex. They built a comprehensive detailed project report with an estimated total cost of roughly $48,000 to $56,000.
Which is a lot for a residential association.
It is, but Because they frame this not just as a luxury architectural upgrade, but as a critical health intervention, they aren't just relying on resident funds. They submitted a proposal asking for a government subsidy under existing smart city and senior wellness programs.
Oh, brilliant.
They are arguing, quite correctly I think, that preventative wellness through artificial sunlight actively reduces the burden on local healthcare systems.
It is a profound difference in perspective, really.
Hmm.
Reflect Orbital views darkness as an engineering obstacle to be conquered with orbital mechanics, massive risk, and billions of dollars.
Yeah.
The Dune Trafalgar community views the lack of sunlight as a biological deficit to be nursed with targeted therapy. One is fighting nature with brute force from space. The other is working harmoniously with human biology using incredibly basic, accessible tools.
So what does this all mean? We look at a tech company trying to launch a constellation of Mylar mirrors into the vacuum of space, charging you $5,000 for a 4-minute camera flash of dim moonlight. Right. And then we look at a community in Dehradun using basic 10,000 lux desk lamps and DIY LED panels to tangibly improve the physiological health and happiness of their elders for a fraction of the cost.
It serves as a powerful reminder that true innovation isn't always about the sheer scale of the project or the dizzying price tag of the technology. The most impactful innovation is defined by how perfectly the technology matches the actual lived human need on the ground.
Exactly. As we wrap up this deep dive, let's look at the core journey we just took. We traveled from a venture-backed startup wanting to launch giant risky mirrors into polar orbit to shoot a few fleeting minutes of light at the Earth, and then down to a grounded community in the misty hills of the Himalayas, transforming the winter health of their senior citizens with clever shared desk lamps and perfectly diffused LEDs.
It's been a wild ride.
It really has. And that leaves you with something to consider today. If you suddenly had an unlimited budget and access to that $5,000 an hour Space Mirror app right now,
Where would you point it?
right, where in the world would you point it? Or perhaps more importantly, what space-age problems in your own life are you currently overcomplicating that could actually be solved right now with a simple Dehradun-style practical fix?